Hi, Adriana. So Eric and I decided to do screencast feedback for essay number 3. This is a really big, important essay, so we want to make sure that we're giving as detailed a feedback as we can. I just want to start off by saying great job. You are off to an excellent start here with your essay. This may be one of the strongest drafts that I've seen in the class, probably in the top 3 that I've read. And so you should feel really good about what you've produced here. And I'm just going to kind of go through the essay and point out places that are already working really well, and then give you some suggestions on what to improve or where to improve. Let me start by saying I know you had some concerns about citing your sources, and even though I'm not looking at a works cited page on here, I will say that the way that you're citing your sources within the essay itself is working really well. So I have no concerns about that. You're using author tags really responsibly throughout. It's always clear to me as the reader who the ideas belong to. And so that's looking really good. Overall, your understanding of Mill is really solid, and you're applying it, I think, really, really carefully and closely to Jake's situation on a level that most of the rest of our class is not at yet. So I think the work you're doing with Mill is great. The biggest suggestion I'm going to have is that if you look back at the assignment sheet, you'll see that you need to use Mill and or Socrates, and then 2 additional sources from the chapter, 2 other concepts or ideas. And so I have some thoughts on how you can pull in those other 2 sources, and I'll share those with you at the end of this video. But for now, let's just kind of go through what you already have and talk about what's working, and I'll provide you some small suggestions along the way. I think your intro works really well. You're setting up the rest of the essay. You have a clear thesis claim. So here's your thesis right here. Nursing school is what you should do to support this. And then you have this nice map. I'm going to be using something written by Eric Salahub. And I want to prove to you that nursing school will allow you access to the good life. So this works really well because it lets Jake know that you have a clear position and that you're going to be supporting it using this particular source and all the sources contained in it throughout the rest of this chapter. And so that's great. I don't like a red pen, so I'm going to switch to a different color. Let's go with pink. Okay, so moving on then, looking here at section 2 or paragraph 2, I think that this paragraph is working really well to teach Jake about the differences between low quality pleasures and high quality pleasures. And you also pull in this concept of fecundity, which is really important. So I'm glad to see you bringing that up. I love that you say, that they don't last very long, they're easy to access. Whereas fecundity or high quality pleasures can lead to more pleasure, so that's good. That's exactly what fecundity is, and they have more meaning to them. I would only suggest that you add one more thing in here, just that with high quality pleasures, they sometimes involve a struggle, or they can be a little more frustrating to attain, right? So learning to play tic-tac-toe, pretty easy. Learning to play chess could be very frustrating for a while until you really get that skill. And so mentioning that they can pose a bit of a struggle up front, but that they have more meaning to them in the long run, I think would be a nice addition right in here. And then I like that you pull in these examples from Eric's chapter. So you can show Jake, just as Eric showed you, how these 2 things are different, how one of them really is more of a low quality and one of them is more of a high quality. So I had one more suggestion in this paragraph, just a wording suggestion. You say here, in Eric's writing, he brings up many things. And that's kind of a really general, vague way to transition the reader. And so I was playing around with some wording, and I came up with, let's see, I can drag this other document onto the screen, right here, something along the lines of this. Eric provides some examples to illustrate the difference between low and high quality pleasures, because that more specifically sets up what you're going to say. And so I would suggest kind of getting rid of this original statement. In Eric's writing, he brings up many things, and trying to be more narrow with it. Something like, Eric provides some examples to illustrate the difference between low and high quality pleasures, because that's just going to link up your ideas a little bit more smoothly along the way. Okay, so that's everything for paragraph 2. I think it's working really well. Paragraph 3, what I love is that you're taking the ideas from paragraph 2 and now you're applying them very specifically to Jake's situation, which is perfect. That's exactly what we were hoping for in this essay. So I don't have any suggestions for this entire paragraph. I think it's really strong, and I think it works really well. Moving into paragraph number 4, I think that this paragraph was pretty strong too, and that it works well as well. But I do think that this is a kind of an abrupt transition. Like, we're not really sure why we're suddenly talking about steak and sushi. And so I think that your paragraph number 4 here would benefit from something we call a topic sentence. And that's the first sentence of the paragraph that kind of hints to the reader what the paragraph is going to be about. And so I played around with that as well. And something like this is kind of what I'm thinking. Jake, it's impossible for you to know whether you will prefer nursing school and life as a nurse as compared to working at the resort until you have actually tried it. So that's the key idea. That's what you conclude with in that paragraph. So I think it would make sense to start with that idea, and then you can launch straight into the ideas about the steak and the sushi to support that. So I think that would work. Now, paragraph 5, this one right here, is probably the least strong in the essay. And so I'm actually going to suggest, because you need to get 2 more sources in or 2 more examples, I would suggest just cutting this paragraph out. So just kind of pulling this out of your essay. It's well written, but you want to get into those other 2 sources because you've already spent quite a bit of time on Mill here. So I'm going to suggest cutting that paragraph. And with this space, and then you can develop a little bit more, you're going to want to bring in 2 more examples from the chapter. Okay, so 2 more examples from the chapter. You can choose whatever examples you'd like. Absolutely. But I had a couple that jumped into mind for me that might fit really nicely with what you're already talking about. So the first one actually comes at the end here. It's this idea of Socrates and the Fool. And in a way that is still Mill, because it is Mill who said, I would rather be Socrates, or better to be Socrates dissatisfied than the fool satisfied. But what does that mean? I mean, that Eric and I would consider that another source, because you're talking about this idea of Socrates and the fool, not so much Mill, but just this whole idea that it's better to live the good life, even if it contains struggle, than it is to be the clueless fool. So why would Mill have said that? And what might that mean to Jake, right? I think that would fit up really nicely. It would kind of link up nicely with this whole idea of the sushi and the steak. So if you created a new paragraph after the sushi and steak paragraph that said, considering making, this choice that you're up against, Jake, consider that Mill said it's better to be Socrates dissatisfied than the fool satisfied, and then maybe explore what does that mean a little bit. So you could develop a paragraph on that. The other thing that I thought could fit in really nicely was the example of Rat Park. And so that might be a strong one to end with. We did a lot of work on Rat Park last week in class, so you might want to go back and look at the discussion board. But that idea that even rats, when given the choice, are going to pick a life of flourishing, of doing rat things, living out their little rat purposes, rather than just opting for that constant pleasure. They stopped pushing the lever when they were put into an enhanced park environment. So if you could summarize that example for Jake and tell him how it connects to his current example, his current situation in his own life, what is the drug? What is the low quality pleasure? What is the thing that he wants to keep getting? And then what would his enriched cage look like? What would that look like for Jake? Is that a life where he's flourishing as a nurse, where he has lots of great colleagues, where he's helping to save patients' lives? So how might that translate to Jake's situation? So again, there's probably 20 examples from chapter 2 that you could rely on, but these were 2 that just came to mind as being particularly connected to what you're already talking about. I'm sure you could pull in other examples and draw connections too, but these were just the 2 that jumped to mind for me. So as I said before, Adriana, really nice work. You're off to a great start here. I think working on getting those other two sources folded in to your essay is going to help a lot. And as you're drafting and finishing up revising before you turn in the essay for Tuesday, just reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. And I look forward to seeing your final draft.